This is part 2 for the SVO150 Sony, which is the professional VHS hi-fi machine, or industrial I should say. We know the blue gear is broken because we saw that in part 1, but there's actually more wrong with it than that. Namely, it won't rewind. But we'll get to that once we get the blue gear installed. I got the part in today. Let's get going and fix this one up and get it back in operation. I'm back on the Sony SVO150. We looked at this one last week and determined that it needs a blue gear for starters. I finally was able to get my hands on the blue gear. So we're going to do that and see if there's anything else it needs and get this one working. Remove the screws to hold the circuit board in place. And pop the board. Some people like to undo the connector here. It's not really necessary. You can pull some slack up. We'll undo the connector here for the mode switch because it is going to come out and be cleaned. We'll remove the cut washers for the main cam. And first things first, we'll verify that the alignment is correct before pulling anything, which it is. You can see the 3 pins on the cam mechanisms here lining up with the holes. Therefore, this hole will be lined up with the hole below the chassis. And these holes are all lined up as well. There'll be a little arrow over here pointing at the mode switch. There's a hole here that lines up. So I'll pull the main cam gear out, keep everything else in position, and now I just need to rotate the guides up so I can lift up one gear, and we'll pull this other cut washer off. It's important you don't lift the white gear too high, as to you don't want to bend that control arm. Guide here. Cut washer from the guide. When I do that, the guide's going to drop out. That's okay. It's easy enough to put back on from the other side. You can also take off the second guide. That would eliminate the possibility of bending that arm if you were to pull that white gear up too high. Lift off the broken gear and the guide control arm. And now change the broken gear. I'll pop the gear out of here. Turn it, lift it off. Take our spring, lift it out. Put the spring into the new gear. Goes into that slot just like that. And now we need to latch it in behind the little catch here, and then just turn. And as we're turning it, press it down and it will drop into position. And now the gear is now locked in place. We've got the spring on. You see, there's the spring. So this gear is ready to go back into place. We'll take it and drop it back down onto the mechanism, and same with this other one. Right now our alignment is not correct. We'll deal with that in a minute. I'm just going to put the guide back on. To do that, let's set the machine up on its side so I can push the guide back in place. So I just need to hold the guide in place and put the pin back through, and we'll put the cut washer back on to hold the guide pin onto the control arm. Okay. Okay, that one is now complete. And we can turn the machine back over on its back and complete the timing. Okay, when the mechanism is timed, you'll see the timing marks will line up, and you'll be able to put a screwdriver or something down through here, and it'll go through the timing hole on the chassis as well as down here. That one will go all the way through as well as this one over here as well. It's hard to see on camera because we're not looking parallel, but if we were looking right down here, we'll see parallax on here that lines up with that hole, and there's one directly below there as well. That is the home position. So now we can put the main cam gear back on. I should also point out, when you lift this lever or lift this gear up to clear this one, do not pull it too far, because you don't want to bend this loading arm, which is very, very thin. So it's just enough to clear the gear. Does that make sense? Enough just to clear the gear. We get our 3 levers into position, and make sure that our timing has not shifted on the main cam. And you'll also see the timing marks are correct. Looking over further over here, you'll see that the timing marks here have not moved. We have the arrow pointing right at the mode switch. You'll see there. You see that? Can we get a focus on that? So there's the hole right there, and it's pointing at the timing mark on the cam gear. And this cam gear here, you can put a screwdriver or something down there and right into the chassis, so you know that you're correct. You'll see the timing hole there, and there's another timing hole up here. If the alignment is off, you will see that that won't line up. So that is correct. And we've got the timing marks here. So now it's just a matter of putting the cam gear back on. Cam gear goes in place. You're going to see the 3 little pins that will stick up, and they will be visible through these holes in the cam gear. So I drop the cam gear on. There are the 3 holes. We're just going to move the cam levers into position so that they line up with the holes, like that. And this one over here, you can just move this one down here a bit. This lever, it's on this green. I think it's on the green. There we go. Just like that. And that goes in, drops in place, just like that. We put our cut washer back on. We'll put on our main cam plate first. That goes on like that. Put on our cut washers to hold the mechanism together. Once we have the cut washers back in place, I can now, oh, this is loose. That shouldn't be loose like that. That screw should be tight. That's what that's for, to stop that from slipping. But that's, the spring sets the tension. That's why it looks like there's wear on this belt. We're going to remove the mode switch and clean it. This is another difference between the Pro machine and the consumer machine, is the mode switch. The consumer machine, the mode switch just makes contact with some metal contacts that go against a plug that's part of the circuit board, and on the industrial machine it's actually a separate little connector with a wired connector to the main board. One's more reliable than the other, but that's the way they did it. We'll pop this open and we'll see that the mode switch itself is pretty gungy. So we'll get some deoxit, clean that up, and put it back together, and then we can throw the board back in, test the machine, see if it works. Yeah, there was a fair bit of oxidation on those contacts, which is to be expected considering how old this machine is. We'll do the same for the actual switch contacts themselves. We'll put some deoxit on them and clean them off. And we'll just put another drop or two on the switch just to lubricate and keep the contacts clean going forward. Pop the switch back together, spin it around a few times just to seat everything. And that'll make sure everything's nice and clean. And then we can set it up, go back to our home position. On here there's a little timing mark which kind of points towards the end of the connector here, and that will bring the alignment hole into the correct position for lining up with the timing mark on the sub-cam gear. So the parts as labeled on this is the main cam gear, this is the linear cam, this is the sub cam, and then of course the mode switch, which is a cam gear as well. It has a mechanical cam lobe on it to move this lever for the brakes. So we'll get the mode switch back into position, drop it in, and this is where the timing is done. We make sure that our timing mark is lining up with that arrow. There's the timing mark there. There's the arrow. And then to drop it into position, we need to move this little plastic arm over here. That's so that it locks in with that pin that goes into that cam gear. And then the two screws can hold down the mode switch cam gear. Put those two back in. Now we need to put the belt back on, and most importantly, tighten down that screw. The spring here, its only job is to set the belt at the correct tension, and then you tighten it down. Alright, now I can throw the circuit board back in. So turn it around, drop it into position. You'll notice on this one, everything is connected by a cable. On the consumer version, this actually plugs in. The board itself is different, and it actually plugs in to the capstan, as well as there's a connector right here, that part of the board that actually mates with the connector itself on the mode switch. So throw the screws back in, and then I'll give the machine a test. On the top side, one thing I do want to remove is this foam wheel, because it's deteriorated. As you can see, it's falling apart. So we do need to take that foam wheel off, otherwise we run the risk of actually contaminating the head. Those are all past their prime now. They need to come out. We don't need to worry about replacing them. They never really did that much to begin with when the machines were new. We do need to lubricate. Looks like the grease has been actually removed from here. We're going to throw some grease onto the pinch arm post and to the tower gear, and I'm going to lubricate this pin. And because this one here is not sticking now, I don't need to take it off. I'm just going to throw a drop of oil down into here. That'll lubricate that pin and save me having to take it off and realign it. It's not a big deal to do the alignment on it, but if it's not seized up, then a drop of oil will go a long way to prevent it from seizing up down the road. Probably the easiest way to get oil into here is just to put a drop of oil onto the end of a screwdriver or something else that you can use to transfer it down, and then just take it down and put it alongside of that nut. That's probably the easiest way to do this. As you can see, there's no resistance here whatsoever. The spring pulls the guide back. I'm going to put a bit of white lithium grease onto the rails. Don't need much, just a little bit. This is just to keep the parts from sticking. We can put some on the bottom as well. I'm going to pull the top of the tower gear off. Lift off the pinch roller and put a bit of grease both into the bearing and onto the post itself, and we'll throw some grease down onto here. This will work its way down the tower gear, and a little bit more down onto this part of the gear here. That'll lubricate the top side. Put a little bit onto the worm gear here. It already has some, so we don't need to worry about too much on that. And on the bottom, I can throw some onto the main cam. Put some onto the worm gear here. The main cam had grease in it, so I'm not too worried about that. Plastic gears generally don't need much in the way of lubrication, but there is lube. You can see it. The green stuff that's in here, that's lubricant, so I don't need to worry too much about that. Okay, time to throw a tape in it and see if it works. That part works. And it plays. Of course it plays. Was there any question that it wouldn't play? I guess you need the remote control to turn the graphics off on this output. The BNC output probably does not have the on-screen display, because most of these Sonys, they had a monitor out with the on-screen graphics, and they had a line out with no on-screen graphics. And I would think that the monitor out is, or the other one is the monitor out. I can confirm that by just plugging it into the BNC connector. Okay, I was wrong. There it is. It's on the BNC output as well. Okay, well, that's okay. I'm sure they have the remote control to turn it off. Search forward working. Search reverse is working. Let's try full fast forward. Fast forward. Rewind. What? What happened there? Well, that's interesting. It didn't go into rewind. I'll have to investigate that and see why. Okay, I got it loaded with no tape. I think the pendulum arm might be sticking a bit here. This is the pendulum arm, which flips back and forth to drive the tape spool, and I think this might be sticking a bit. Let's see what happens when I go to reverse, go to the other direction. It should, the gear will reverse, this will reverse, and this should flip the other way. And it is at about full rewind. Oh, that did. I think that's sticking a bit anyway. Let's just stop it. So to make the pendulum arm a little easier to get to, I'm just going to remove the front loader. Okay, now I can get under here, because this is likely where it's sticking, is right here. You see, when I turn the gear, that should move quickly, and it's slow. So we'll pop out this plastic retainer. It's just held in place with a clip. And we'll lift off the pendulum arm and clean up clean up the dried grease that's in here and on this post here, because this should flip back and forth nice and easy, and it's sticking. What's happened is the lubricant on here is gummed up, so we're going to clean that off with some alcohol. Yeah, that's a little better. Now there is a lever here that does control it. It moves it back and forth. It's right here. Okay, that's a little better. I don't know if we need to put any oil in there or not. I mean, these are nylon, so they don't normally need to have any type of, you don't want to put any petroleum grease or petroleum oil into nylon. You want to generally try to keep them fairly clean. I'll pop this piece back on. It just snaps in place. Like that. The FLM, or front loading mechanism, drops back in, which I often wondered why they called it an FLM, or a front loading mechanism, on consumer VCRs, but on professional VTRs like 3/4 and Betacam, this was called the tape elevator. That's what it does. It elevates the tape up and loads it, right? But yeah, different names for the same part, named differently on different machines. It just drops in place like that, and the screws go back in to hold it down. Load the front loading mechanism back again. Drop the cassette. There you go. And it's got to obviously spin this so that it can detect that the tape is actually turning, because there are sensors down there. Stop, and then we go back to forward, and the other one turns. That's good. Eject. I can pull the little pieces of tape off the side here that I use to block the optical sensors. Reload the tape, make sure that all the functions work as intended. So there's play. Yes, I have a picture. Search forward, search reverse, stop, full fast forward. It's going to go for a bit and then determine where the tape is, and there it goes. And full rewind. So there it is, once again playing the tape. Search forward's working. Reverse search is working. And the display also works on here. The fluorescent display is actually working on this machine. It might not be that easy to see on camera, but it is indeed working. It's very bright in here. That make it a little easier to see, but it is quite bright. It is very bright in the shop here. But the display is working, and it's not burned out like a lot of them. A lot of these machines, because of the age of them, the actual fluorescent tube is getting a bit weak. But it's looking good on this one. We're going to clean the heads on it and get it out of here. So hit eject. There we go. Clean the heads and send this one on its way. I don't need to show that, do I? I don't think so. We're going to use a piece of paper anyway for this. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Actually, we'll clean the heads with a Q-tip for the audio control head and so forth. And I'll clean the other one with just a piece of writing paper. And then we'll end this one because it's gone on long enough, I think. My bottle of alcohol is getting pretty low. I'm going to have to get some more. Remember when during COVID you couldn't buy 99% isopropyl alcohol? There was none available. Clean the guides. Clean the lower drum. Staying clear of the video heads. There actually was a fair bit of debris on the audio head as well as the guides. Turn the head drum counterclockwise when doing this, because that's the direction it turns. If you're cleaning a 3/4 inch pneumatic, you turn the head clockwise, as that's the direction it turns. Betamax, Betacam, 3/4 inch, and 8mm formats and mini DV all turn counterclockwise. You're not doing this or any type of wet cleaner on 8mm or mini DV because the tape formulation is metal and alcohol will not dissolve it. Alcohol will dissolve oxide-based tape, VHS beta. If you've got a Betacam, not SP version. If you've got Betacam SP or ED beta or 8mm high 8, digital 8, and mini DV, you should be using a dry type cleaning cassette, because how they work is they work by friction to actually grind the debris off of the head chips. Because it's a metal tape, when metal tape flakes off, it generally fuses to the head itself, and it has to be removed physically by rubbing it off with a dry cleaning tape. This stuff generally is not going to do any good for those type of tapes. Anyway, this one's done. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye.